Hello, welcome to another session in this course. As part of this session, I'm going to cover the next topic, that is using for of loop for enumerating objects in JavaScript. So let's get started. So how to use for of loop with objects? How to use for of loop with objects in JavaScript is the topic for now. Generally speaking, we have to use for of loop with arrays, guys. Okay, for of loop is not for objects. Generally speaking, okay, generally speaking, for of loop is actually used with arrays, not with objects, not with objects. For enumerating or for accessing the elements of objects, we don't use for of loop. Then what is the proper loop that we have to use with objects for enumerating or accessing the properties of the objects? What is the best loop? For in loop. For in loop is the you know proper loop. Proper loop we have to use for enumerating or for accessing the elements or properties. Okay, enumerating properties of an object. But here the topic says how to use for of loop for enumerating or accessing the properties of the objects. Is it still possible even though for of loop is actually used with arrays? Can we also use with objects even though for of is meant for arrays, not for objects, but can we still use for of loop with objects? The answer is yes. Okay. Even though for in loop is the proper loop to be used for enumerating properties of the object, but can we use for of loop with objects too, even though it's for arrays? Yes, guys. Some developers still use that for of loop, even though it's meant for arrays. We can also use for of with objects also. But what will happen if we use for of loop, which is meant for arrays, directly with objects? It's not going to work, but there is a way to make it work. So let me explain all this stuff. Okay. So to understand all these concepts, you should already have gone through my previous sessions where I covered different stuff. Okay. For in and all those stuff, how to use for in with objects. For in loop is actually with objects. For of is actually for arrays. But here I'm saying how to use for of with objects. That's a different story, right? For of cannot be directly used with objects, but there is a technique or some kind of method is there using by following that. Okay, by following that we can actually use for of also with objects, and some people actually use also, though it's not for of is actually meant for arrays, but we can still use for of with objects even though it's not meant for objects. Okay, so without any delay, let's get started with this, guys. Okay, let me do something for of objects. For of is actually meant for arrays, not for objects, but still I'm going to show you how to use it for objects also. So here I'll say user and I'll create an object here, name colon. Okay, just give something like experience colon 19, then create user function I'll create, or method you can say inside an object. Whatever the function you create is generally called as a method. Okay, welcome. Like this I'll create an object, guys. Now the next thing that I'm going to show here is how can we use for of loop, which is actually for arrays with objects. Let e of user. If I write like this, okay, let e of user, or let something of user. Okay, you see I'm using for of loop with objects, but for of loop need to be actually used with arrays. It's not meant for objects. So if I directly try to use for of loop with objects, you are going to get an error, guys. Okay, you are going to get an error in the output. So here, come here and simply for of objects dot js. If I run, you see, I'm going to get an error. As I mentioned, right, you are going to get an error, which is a type error. And the message it is coming is user. User object is not iterable or iterable. Okay, you cannot iterate through the properties of this object using for of loop directly. So what is the best loop to iterate through the objects of this to the iterate to the properties of this object? Instead of, you have to use in. In this case, it's going to work, okay? For in loop will work directly with objects, but for of loop will not work directly with the objects. So let me clear this and run this again to see. This time, you see, when I say E and all, I get all the property names, name, experience, greet, user we got, right? So this is what we can do, guys, okay? So generally we'll do something like this, okay? Generally, we do something like this, like, user of E. If I give like this, you see, not only this property names, property keys, but also the values also will get, okay? Here I can say key also, that is also fine. Let key in user. Here is a key and user of key. If I say user of key, object of key, then we'll get the properties also. You see, name Arun Motor, experience 19, greet user function. Okay, we got everything. This is a perfect way of using for in loop with the objects. And this is a direct loop that we can use with objects. But if I change it to off, it's not going to work. Just now I showed you, right? If I change it to off, it's not going to work, guys, because for off loop cannot iterate to the properties of the object. Okay, only through the arrays it can iterate, but not through the object properties. It cannot enumerate the object properties, guys. Okay, you see, you'll get the type error. User is not, this object is not iterable. It will get, but there is a way. I told you that there is a way to iterate through the, okay, properties of this particular object. So here, after the user, I have to write, here I have to do something, guys. Here, instead of writing user, I need to write object dot keys, and in the keys method we have to use object dot keys method. In that you have to provide the object. So what will happen here is this keys method, okay, this keys method will retrieve all the keys from this user in an array format, okay. All the keys in this particular user are retrieved with help of keys method. Object dot keys method will, okay, retrieve all the keys from this object in a array format. That's why we are actually converting the object keys to array and then doing this, okay. Directly it's not possible. Indirectly, by converting the object property names to the keys, to the key, kind of array keys, okay, it's possible. Run this and see that this time it's working, okay. So it's converting keys method of object is actually converting this user property names into the keys, okay, array of keys. That's why it's working. Now, what if you want to get the values? What if you want to get the values? For that, you have to write like this: let value of object dot values, and here provide the object name, all the values, okay, all the values in this object properties Arun Moteri 19 function, everything will be taken, converted into an array here, and for of loop will work with arrays, you already know. Okay, if I give value here, you see all the values will be retrieved here. I'll just, for separation, I'll write console.log, and I'll just put a line here so that you can understand what is happening and all. Now here, let me clear this. Let me clear this and let me run this again. You see, we got the values also. After this line, we got the values. Before that, we got the keys. Here we got the values. And there's one more way, that is, we can also do like this. Instead of separate keys and separate values, we can also do something like this. For let entry, you have to write entry of object dot, you can give any name here. I'm just giving entry, object dot entries. And here I'll give the object name. So here, if I use keys method, only property keys will be retrieved in the array format. If I say values method here, values of this properties only will be retrieved in the array format. If I say entries here, what will happen? Console.log. In this case, if I say entry here, you see both key value pairs will be retrieved. Okay. Okay. Here, in the help of entries method, it will return an array of key value pairs and we can print them. Okay. Let me run this and you see. Here you can see key value pairs got printed. Name, Arun Motor, experience, key value pairs will be printed. Let's say you want only keys here. Just say entry of 0. Okay. If you say entry means this kind of stuff. Or we'll do one thing. I'll just write in a separate way. Okay. I'll just copy this code. Instead of entry, if I print instead of entry, anyhow, this entry is nothing but an array, right? It is an array of key value pairs. Entry is nothing but an array of key value pairs. So what I can do here is I can use in every entry which is a key value pair, the first one, the name will be at the index 0 and Arun Motor will be at the index 1. Experience will be at the index 0. 19 will be at the index 1. Greet user will be at the index 0. Function will be at the index 1, right? So I'll use the technique of the arrays. You know how to access elements of the arrays, right? So I'll use the technique too. This will access the key, this will access the value. Okay. So like this also I can you do guys. Okay. Like this also I can do. So let me do one thing, clear this, run this and see what is coming here. When I say entry of 0, name came. Entry of 1 means Arun Motor, value came. Okay. Like this also we can do guys. Okay. Or there's one more way. When you are using entries, there are multiple ways. Okay. The one more way is like this. Copy this and do something like this. Here, here instead of writing entry, right? Create an array directly here itself. Okay. Represent an array. The first one is a key. Second one is a value. Now here in place of this entry of 0, write key. This is also fine. Either you can say entry of 0, entry of 1, or you can say key comma value and you can write key value here. Okay. This also will work fine. Multiple ways are there guys. Okay. Only the concept here is you need to convert the object properties into array. Okay. You need to convert the object properties into array of values or array of keys or array of entries, that is key value pairs, etc., etc. Then you can use any of these techniques. If you come here, you see name Arun Motori, key is name and value is Arun Motori. Key is experience, value is 19. Key is read user and value is function. Okay, like that. You can play with this guys. Okay. So for of loop is actually meant for arrays, so we cannot directly use with objects, but what we can actually do is we can convert that object into arrays, arrays of keys or arrays of values or arrays of key value pairs of the properties of the object, and then I enumerate them with the help of the for loop. Not directly possible, but indirectly by converting the object properties into array elements, we can do that. Okay. So hope guys you understood how to use for of loop for enumerating objects in JavaScript, and here are the notes, so you can use them for your reference and actually use these notes for our reference to see whether I'm missing anything. Let me cross check at a high level. I know that I have covered everything as part of this, but let me cross check. Okay, once. Yeah, how to use for enumerating objects in JavaScript, using entries and all. I covered all this stuff, right? We can actually get keys, we can actually get values, we can actually get the entries and all the stuff. Okay, then yeah, all good, guys. All good. We're able to do that. All good so far. Okay. Fine. That's it, guys. That's it. Okay. We are done. Whatever I wanted to cover, I already covered for you. Okay. So that's all for this session. See you in the next session. Thank you. Bye bye.